Question 1. Given the circumstances, Mr. Ramirez is servicing a small hermetically sealed refrigerator containing 4.5 pounds of R134 refrigerant. The compressor is not operational, and he must recover the refrigerant before disposal. Which recovery method and minimum recovery percentage should Mr. Ramirez follow to comply with EPA 608 regulations for small appliances? A. Recover at least 80% of the refrigerant using passive recovery equipment. If necessary, heat the compressor to aid recovery. B. Recover at least 90% of the refrigerant using active recovery equipment only. Heating the compressor is not allowed. C. Recover 100% of the refrigerant by evacuating the system with a vacuum pump until no pressure remains. D. Recover at least 70% of the refrigerant using available equipment without compressor operation considerations. Answer. Correct answer A. Explanation. For small appliances, defined as hermetically sealed units with equals 5 pounds refrigerant, EPA 608 Section 608C2 mandates minimum of 80% recovery if the compressor is not running. Passive recovery, gravity or non-powered devices can be used first, and heating the compressor gently is allowed to aid refrigerant removal. Active recovery equipment is required if passive methods are ineffective. Options B and C exceed or misstate requirements, and D is below the EPA minimum. This ensures maximum recovery while recognizing small appliance limitations. 40 CFR Air 82.156C. Question 2. In the context of refrigerant substitution, is new and is evaluating a drop-in HFO refrigerant to replace R22 in an existing small appliance. Which of the following best explains why drop-in replacements may not be suitable and what must be considered before the switch? A. Drop-in replacements are fully compatible with existing oils and require no system modifications. B. Drop-in replacements often have different oil compatibility and require system flushing or oil changes. C. Drop-in replacements always have a lower global warming potential to achieve CS. D. Drop-in replacements can be charged as a liquid directly without risk of fractionation. Answer. Correct answer B. Explanation. Drop-in replacements generally are not fully compatible with the mineral or alkyl benzene oils used in older R22 systems. The EPA and industry guidance, such as ARIAN EPA SNAP program, warn that these substitutes may require flushing to remove old oil and possibly changing to PO oils to prevent compressor damage. Moreover, improper charging can cause fractionation in blends, reducing performance, increasing emissions. Options A, C, and D are false generalizations. Understanding oil compatibility and proper procedures are critical for safe, efficient retrofit. EPA SNAP rules, 40 CFR Part 82, Appendix M. Question 3. From the perspective of safety practices, Mr. Owens is about to pierce a sealed refrigeration system on a small appliance to recover refrigerant. Which of the following is the most important safety consideration and regulatory requirement when using piercing valves on small appliances? A. Piercing valves are approved for permanent installation on small appliances. B. Piercing valves should only be used temporarily and removed after refrigerant recovery. C. Piercing valves eliminate the need to evacuate the system after recovery. D. Personal protective equipment (PPE) is optional when handling piercing valves on refrigerant lines. Answer. Correct answer B. Explanation. EPA regulations and industry best practices prohibit permanent installation of piercing valves due to potential leaks and contamination. They are allowed only as temporary tools to access refrigerant in hermetic systems lacking service ports, particularly for recovery on small appliances equals 5 pounds. Additionally, PPE such as gloves and eye protection is mandatory to prevent frostbite or chemical exposure. Options A, C, and D contradict safety standards. 4 CFR S.154 OSHA guidelines. Temporary use minimizes system damage and environmental release risks. Question 4. Taking into account the Clean Air Act Section 608, Isa Patel has detected a refrigerant leak from a small appliance that she services regularly. According to EPA regulations, what is her responsibility regarding leak repair and record keeping under the Type I certification? A. Leak repair is not required on small appliances and no record keeping is necessary. B. Leak repair is mandatory only if the appliance has more than 50 pounds of refrigerant. C. Leak repair is recommended but not legally required. However, proper documentation must be maintained. D. Leak repair is required if the appliance is not disposed of within 30 days and proper records of the repair and refrigerant handling must be kept. Answer. Correct answer. D. Explanation. Under EPA Section 608, leak repair regulations primarily apply to appliances with over 50 pounds refrigerant, but small appliances have disposal requirements mandating full recovery before disposal. If the appliance will continue to be serviced, not disposed, leaks must be repaired to prevent venting. Proper documentation of refrigerant recovery, leak repair, and disposal is legally required. Clean Air Act emphasizes minimizing emissions and maintaining records for compliance inspections. 40 CIS.166. Options A, B, and C misinterpret the law's intent for small appliances. Question 5. Based on the information about recovery equipment standards Clark uses, a recovery unit manufactured in 1990 on a small appliance with 5 pounds of refrigerant. Which HEPA requirements apply to his equipment, and what must he consider for compliance? A. He must use equipment certified for high-pressure refrigerants and labeled with the appropriate EPA approval for pre-1993 units. B. He can use any recovery unit regardless of manufacturing date for small appliances. C. He must only use post-1993 equipment certified for low-pressure refrigerants. D. Recovery equipment manufactured before 1993 is banned from use by regulations. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. EPA regulations require recovery equipment to be certified for use with specific refrigerants and pressure ranges. Units manufactured before November 15, 1993 must be certified for the type of refrigerant and pressure category, high or low. Mr. Clark's 1990 unit can be used if it's certified and labeled accordingly, especially for high-pressure refrigerants like R134A. Using uncertified equipment risks improper recovery and venting. Options B and D are incorrect. Option C only applies to newer equipment. 4 CFR S82.158. Question 6. Under the assumption that Mr. Garcia is recovering refrigerant from a small appliance with a non-operating compressor, he notices the recovery process is very slow. Considering EPA guidelines, what is the best troubleshooting step to speed up recovery without violating regulations? A. Increase vacuum pressure to speed recovery beyond equipment ratings. B. Heat the compressor gently to increase refrigerant vapor pressure and aid recovery. C. Introduce compressed air into the system to force refrigerant out faster. D. Charge the system with a small amount of substitute refrigerant to facilitate flow. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. EPA and industry best practices recommend gently heating the compressor body with a heat gun or warm towels, never open flame, to increase internal pressure and help vaporize refrigerant for faster recovery. This method is especially effective when the compressor is not operating. Option A. Risks equipment damage. Option C is strictly forbidden. Introducing air contaminates the refrigerant and can cause safety hazards, and D violates venting prohibition and contaminates the system. 40 CRS 82.156 EPA Recovery Guidelines. Question 7. While examining the relationship between refrigerant pressure and temperature, Zhang observes that during recovery, the pressure in the system is unexpectedly low given the ambient temperature. What could be a likely explanation related to system condition, and how should she proceed? A. The system is properly evacuated, no action needed. B. The low pressure indicates a leak or that the system is nearly empty of refrigerant, requiring verification before further recovery attempts. C. The low pressure means the refrigerant is superheated, so recovery should continue until pressures normalize. D. The pressure drop is due to fractionation, so refrigerant should be charged back immediately. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Pressure temperature charts correlate system pressure with refrigerant saturation temperature. Low pressure at ambient temperature typically indicates either a leak or the system is near empty of refrigerant. Zhang should verify with leak detectors or gauges before continuing. Continuing recovery without verification may risk equipment damage or incomplete recovery. Options and C. Misunderstand PT relationships. A D. Incorrectly associates pressure drop with fractionation during recovery, which is relevant to charging blends, not recovery. EPA Technical Manuals, the ASHRAE Refrigeration Handbook. Question 8. Considering the evidence from EPA regulations, Mr. Simmons is disposing of an old window air conditioner unit with 3 pounds of refrigerant. What documentation and procedural steps must Mr. Simmons follow to ensure compliance with Type I disposal regulations? A. No recovery or documentation is required because the unit has less than 5 pounds refrigerant. B. Complete refrigerant recovery using EPA-approved methods and maintain written records of recovery for at least 3 years. C. Only document disposal if the refrigerant is reclaimed for resale. D. Recover refrigerant and notify the EPA within 30 days after disposal. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Under Section 608, small appliances containing 5 pounds or less refrigerant must have all refrigerant recovered before disposal, regardless of refrigerant amount. Technicians must use EPA-approved methods, e.g. recovery units or piercing valves, and keep records, date, method, amount, recovered appliance type for 3 years. This ensures environmental protection and regulatory compliance. Options and C incorrectly waive responsibilities, and D is not a regulatory requirement. 40 CFRS 82.156 C SS 82.166. Question 9. When considering the core principles of the EPA 608 technician certification, which of the following best describes the rationale behind restricting refrigerant sales only to certified technicians? A. To ensure refrigerants are only used by experienced technicians, preventing unintentional venting and environmental harm. B. To increase sales and profits of refrigerants through limited distribution. C. To promote the use of substitute refrigerants by controlling their availability. D. To allow only manufacturers to handle refrigerants directly. Answer. Correct answer A. Explanation. The EPA restricts refrigerant sales to certified technicians to ensure only trained individuals handle refrigerants properly, minimizing illegal venting, improper recovery, and environmental damage consistent with Clean Air Act goals. This regulatory control helps enforce technician accountability and proper refrigerant management. Options B, C, and D misrepresent the intent and scope of the certification and sales restrictions. 40 CFR 82.32. Question 10. In light of recent developments in refrigerant recovery, Easterly must decide whether to use active or passive recovery equipment on a small appliance with an operational compressor. According to EPA regulations and best practice, what is the preferred recovery method and minimum recovery requirement? A. Passive recovery is preferred, recovering at least 80% of refrigerant. Active recovery is required, recovering at least 90% of refrigerant, utilizing the compressor if it is operational. C. Active recovery is only required for appliances with over 50 pounds refrigerant. D. Recovery percentage is not specified for operational compressors on small appliances. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. For small appliances with operational compressors, EPA Section 608 mandates recovery of at least 90% of refrigerant using active recovery equipment, which may utilize the running compressor to assist. Passive recovery is reserved for non-operating compressors. This requirement ensures maximum capture of refrigerant to prevent venting. Option C misstates scope, and D ignores regulatory minimums. 40 CFRS 82.156. Question 11. Under the assumption that Clark is recovering refrigerant from a small appliance with a non-operating compressor, she notices the refrigerant vapor pressure inside the system is very low. What is the best procedure she should follow to improve the recovery rate while complying with EPA regulations? A. Use a heat source to gently warm the compressor and increase vapor pressure to aid recovery. B. Increase vacuum pressure beyond equipment limits to accelerate recovery. C. Introduce compressed air to force refrigerant out more quickly. D. Add a small amount of refrigerant to the system to raise pressure for recovery. Answer. Correct answer A. Explanation. When the compressor is not operating, refrigerant vapor pressure can be low, slowing recovery. Gently heating the compressor using a heat gun or warm towels, not an open flame, increases vapor pressure, improving recovery efficiency in complying with EPA recovery requirements. Options B and C violate equipment safety and EPA venting prohibitions. Adding refrigerant D is illegal during recovery and contaminates the system. Fort CFRS 82.156 EPA recovery guidelines. Question 12. Taking into account the Clean Air Act Section 608, Mr. Thompson is disposing of a small hermetically sealed refrigerator that contains 3.5 pounds of refrigerant. What steps and documentation is Mr. Thompson legally required to complete under EPA regulations? A. Recover all refrigerant using EPA-approved methods, document the recovery, and retain records for at least 3 years. B. No recovery or documentation is required due to the small size of the appliance. C. Recover refrigerant only if the unit contains more than 5 pounds of refrigerant. D. Notify the EPA within 10 days of disposal with recovery documentation. Answer. Correct answer A. Explanation. Regardless of refrigerant quantity equals 5 pounds, EPA mandates complete recovery of refrigerants from small appliances prior to disposal using approved methods. E.g. recovery units or pacing valves. Records documenting the date, appliance type, and recovery method must be retained for at least 3 years to ensure regulatory compliance and enforcement. Options B and C wrongly exempt small appliances, and D is not requirement. 40 CFR 82.156, C SS 82.166. Question 13. In light of recent developments in refrigerant recovery, is Davis servicing a window air conditioner with an operational compressor? Which recovery method and minimum refrigerant recovery percentage must she adhere to under EPA Type I regulations? A. Passive recovery with at least 80% recovery. B. Active recovery with at least 90% recovery utilizing the running compressor. C. Passive recovery with 100% recovery. D. Active recovery with no specified recovery percentage for small appliances. Answer. Correct answer B. Explanation. EPA regulations require technicians to recover at least 90% of the refrigerant using active recovery equipment when the compressor is operational in small appliances. This often involves using the running compressor to assist recovery. Passive recovery and the 80% recovery minimum apply only when compressors are not operating. Options C and D are incorrect interpretations of EPA standards. 40 CFR 82.156. Question 14. From the perspective of refrigerant compatibility, Mr. Jordan plans to retrofit an older small appliance using R22 with AHFO refrigerant labeled as a drop-in replacement. Which of the following is the most critical concern Mr. Jordan should address before proceeding? A. Drop-in refrigerants are fully compatible with all existing oils and require no system adjustments. B. Drop-in replacements may be incompatible with mineral oils in the system, necessitating oil flushing or changes to prevent compressor damage. C. Drop-in replacements have the same pressure temperature characteristics as R22 and require no system adjustments. D. Drop-in refrigerants always reduce system efficiency. Answer. Correct answer B. Explanation. Drop-in replacements for R22 often require PO oil instead of the mineral oil found in older systems. Failure to change oil or flush the system can lead to oil breakdown, poor lubrication, and compressor failure. Though marketed as drop-in, these refrigerants frequently require careful evaluation. Options and C incorrectly imply full compatibility, and D is not universally true. Proper retrofit procedures protect equipment and environment. EPA SNAP Program, 40 CFR Part 82. Question 15. Given the circumstances, is new and is using a recovery unit manufactured in 1988 to recover refrigerant from a small appliance containing R134A. What requirements must her equipment meet to comply with EPA regulations? A. The recovery unit must be EPA certified for high-pressure refrigerants and labeled accordingly for pre-1993 equipment. B. The recovery unit must be replaced because pre-1993 equipment is banned. C. Any recovery unit can be used for small appliances regardless of manufacture date. D. The recovery unit must be EPA certified only if the appliance contains more than 5 pounds of refrigerant. Answer. Correct answer A. Explanation. EPA requires that recovery units manufactured before November 15, 1993 must be certified for the refrigerant type and pressure range they are used with, high or low pressure. Newen's 1988 unit can be used if it has proper EPA certification and labeling. This ensures safe, effective recovery without venting. Options B and C are false statements, and D misinterprets the EPA's equipment certification requirements. For CFR 82.158. Question 16. While analyzing the consequences of a refrigerant leak in a small appliance, Mr. Patel is unsure about leak repair obligations under the Clean Air Act for small appliances. Which statement correctly describes his responsibilities? A. Leak repair is not required on small appliances and no documentation is necessary. B. Leak repair is mandatory only if the appliance contains over 50 pounds of refrigerant. C. Leak repair is required if the appliance is being serviced and not disposed of with proper records maintained. D. Leak repair is optional for small appliances and does not require documentation. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Although leak repair mandates primarily focus on appliances with 50 pounds refrigerant, small appliances must have leaks repaired if they are to be serviced further rather than disposed of. Technicians must document repairs and refrigerant handling to comply with EPA's goal of minimizing refrigerant emissions. Options A, B, and D disregard regulatory nuances and risk legal non-compliance. 40 CFR S 82.166. Question 17. When faced with a scenario where a small appliance has a sealed compressor but no service ports, Taylor needs to recover refrigerant. Which statement best describes the EPA's position on the use of piercing valves in this situation? A. Piercing valves are allowed for permanent installation to facilitate recovery and service. B. Piercing valves may be used temporarily for recovery but must be removed after the procedure. C. Piercing valves are not allowed under any circumstances. D. Piercing valves eliminate the need for certified recovery equipment. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. EPA allows the use of piercing valves temporarily on small hermetically sealed appliances without service ports to recover refrigerant, provided they are removed after use to prevent leaks. Permanent installation is prohibited due to leak risk. Options A, C, and D misstate EPA regulations and can lead to improper refrigerant handling and environmental harm. 40 CFR 82.154. Question 18. From a practical standpoint, Mr. Lewis has recovered refrigerant from a small appliance but accidentally mixed two different refrigerants in the recovery cylinder. What are the implications of this action according to EPA regulations and best practices? A. Mixing refrigerants is allowed as long as the recovery cylinder is properly labeled. B. Mixing refrigerants contaminates the refrigerant, rendering it unusable for reclamation and increasing disposal complexity. C. Mixing refrigerants improves recovery efficiency by combining properties. D. Mixing refrigerants is acceptable if the mixture is used immediately in another system. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. The EPA strictly prohibits mixing different refrigerants during recovery because it contaminates the refrigerant, preventing reclamation and reuse. Contaminated refrigerants must be sent for destruction, increasing environmental impact and cost. Proper segregation and labeling of recovery cylinders are mandatory to maintain refrigerant purity. Options A, C, and D contradict regulatory and environmental standards. 40 CFR S 82.154 EPA Refrigerant Management Guidelines. Question 19. In a modern context of refrigerant handling, Johnson is preparing to ship recovered refrigerant cylinders to a reclaim facility. What DOT and EPA requirements must she comply with to ensure legal transportation? A. Cylinders must be properly labeled, filled within DOT pressure and weight limits, and shipped with safety documentation per DOT hazardous materials regulations. B. Cylinders can be overfilled if shipped to a certified reclaim facility. C. No labeling is required for recovered refrigerants as long as they are shipped directly to a reclaim facility. D. Shipping recovered refrigerant cylinders is prohibited without EPA notification. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. The DOT regulates transportation of recovered refrigerant cylinders as hazardous materials. Cylinders must be properly labeled, filled to safe levels, never exceeding 80% capacity, and accompanied by required shipping papers and safety documentation. Compliance prevents accidents, leaks, and regulatory penalties. Options B and C violate safety rules, and D misinterprets EPA shipping requirements. 49 CFR Parts 171, 180, 4 CFR A82.154. Question 20. Among the various refrigerants used in small appliances, Simmons must identify one with the lowest ozone depletion potential (OP) and zero chlorine content for environmental compliance. Which refrigerant best fits this requirement? A. R22 chlorodifluoroethane. B. R134 tetrafluoroethane. C. R12 dichlorodifluoroethane. D. R502 chlorodifluoroethane blend. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. R134 is an HFC refrigerant with zero chlorine atoms, hence it replaces EFCS HFCS like R12 and R22, which contain chlorine and contribute to ozone depletion. R502 is a blend containing HFCS CFCS with high OP. Selecting refrigerants with low or zero OP complies with the Montreal Protocol and EPA regulations aimed at protecting the ozone layer and Montreal Protocol 40 CFR Part 82. Question 21. Throughout the course of recovering refrigerant from a small appliance with a non-operating compressor, Evans observes that the recovery process is extremely slow. According to EPA regulations, what is the best practice for Evans to improve recovery speed without violating environmental safety rules? A. Apply gentle heat to the compressor to raise refrigerant vapor pressure and aid recovery. Increase recovery unit vacuum pressure beyond the manufacturer's rating to speed recovery. C. Introduce compressed air into the system to help push the refrigerant out faster. D. Add small amount of substitute refrigerant to assist with recovery flow. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. Gently heating the compressor increases refrigerant vapor pressure inside the sealed system, improving recovery speed while complying with EPA's venting prohibition and equipment safety guidelines 40 CFR S.156. Increasing vacuum beyond specs. B. Risks equipment damage. Introducing air. C. Contaminates refrigerant and violates EPA rules, and adding refrigerant. D. Is illegal. Recovery. This method balances efficiency and regulatory compliance. Question 22. Considering the evidence from EPA regulations, Lopez is disposing of a domestic refrigerator containing 4 pounds of refrigerant. What steps must she take to comply with Type I disposal requirements? A. Recover all refrigerant using EPA-approved methods, document recovery details, and keep records for 3 years. B. No recovery or documentation is required because the refrigerant charge is under 5 pounds. C. Only notify the EPA upon disposal. The recovery is optional. D. Recover refrigerant only if the compressor is operational. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. EPA requires full recovery of refrigerant from small appliances equals 5 pounds refrigerant before disposal regardless of compressor status. Documentation of recovery, appliance type, and date must be retained for 3 years to comply with 4 CFR S.156, C and SS.166. Options B, C, and D misinterpret the regulations and risk illegal venting. Question 23. From a practical standpoint, Kim is retrofitting a small appliance previously charged with R22 using an HFO-aced refrigerant labeled as a drop-in. What potential complications should Kim anticipate? A. The drop-in refrigerant will be fully compatible with existing mineral oils and require no further action. B. The drop-in may require oil flushing or replacement with PO oils to ensure compressor protection. C. The drop-in refrigerant always results in higher system efficiency and low pressures. D. The drop-in refrigerant must be charged as liquid to avoid fractionation. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Drop-in replacements often require switching from mineral oil to PO oil or thorough system flushing due to incompatibility, as EPA and industry guidelines emphasize. This avoids compressor damage from oil breakdown. Options A, C, and D either assume full compatibility or incorrectly state charging procedures. EPA SNAP Program 40 CFR Part 82. Question 24. When evaluating leak repair obligations, is Carter Services a small appliance with 3 pounds of refrigerant that has a detectable leak? What is her obligation regarding repair and record keeping under EPA regulations? A. Repair is not required on small appliances and no records must be kept. B. Repair is mandatory only if refrigerant charge exceeds 50 pounds. C. Repair is required if the appliance will continue to be serviced and documentation must be maintained. D. Repair is optional, but all leaks must be reported to the EPA. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. EPA leak repair requirements primarily target large appliances, 50 pounds, but small appliances must have leaks repaired if they remain in service to prevent venting. Proper records of repairs and refrigerant handling must be maintained per 40 CFRS .166. Options A, B, and D misunderstand legal requirements. Question 25. From the perspective of safety, Mr. Daniels plans to use a piercing valve on a small appliance with a sealed compressor to recover refrigerant. What is the EPA's position on piercing valves in this scenario? A. Piercing valves can be permanently installed on small appliances. B. Piercing valves are permitted temporarily but must be removed after refrigerant recovery. C. Piercing valves are prohibited under all circumstances. D. Piercing valves negate the need for certified recovery equipment. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. EPA allows temporary use of piercing valves on hermetically sealed small appliances without service ports strictly for recovery purposes. Permanent installation is forbidden to prevent leaks and contamination. 40 CFRS .154. Options A, C, and D violate safety and environmental regulations. Question 26. Upon closer examination, Mr. Morales discovers that two types of refrigerants were mixed in a recovery cylinder. What are the consequences of this action under EPA guidelines? A. The refrigerants can be reclaimed without issues. B. Mixing contaminates refrigerants, preventing reclamation and requiring destruction. C. Mixing refrigerants improves recovery efficiency. D. Mixed refrigerants may be used immediately in another system. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Mixing different refrigerants contaminates the refrigerant, making it unsuitable for reclamation and forcing costly destruction to prevent environmental harm. Proper segregation and labeling prevent this. 40 CFRS .154. Options A, C, and D are false and dangerous practices. Question 27. In the context of refrigerant transportation, is Hernandez must ship recovered refrigerant cylinders to a reclaim facility. What and EPA regulations apply? A. Cylinders must be properly labeled, filled within weight limits, and accompanied by shipping documentation. B. Cylinders may be overfilled if sent to a certified reclaim facility. C. No special labeling or documentation is required. D. Only EPA notification is required before shipping. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. Hazardous materials regulations require proper labeling, filling limits, typically equals 80% fill, and shipping documentation to ensure safe transport of recovered refrigerants. EPA mandates compliance with these rules to avoid leaks and accidents. 49 CFR Parts 171-180. Options B, C, and D are incorrect. Question 20. Given the circumstances, Mr. Phillips observes abnormally low pressure in a system during recovery at room temperature. What is the most probable cause and appropriate action? A. The system is properly evacuated. Continue recovery. B. The system likely has a leak or is near empty. Verify before proceeding. C. The refrigerant is superheated. Add more refrigerant. D. The pressure drop indicates fractionation. Charge refrigerant immediately. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. At ambient temperature, abnormally low pressure usually signals leaks or a nearly empty system. Verifying system integrity before proceeding prevents equipment damage and ensures complete recovery. Options A, C, and D misunderstand pressure-temperature relations and violate EPA protocols. EPA technical guidance. Question 29. The fundamental question is, why does the EPA restrict refrigerant sales only to certified technicians under Section 608? A. To ensure refrigerants are handled properly, preventing illegal venting and environmental harm. B. To increase sales profits for certified vendors. C. To restrict use of substitute refrigerants. D. To allow only manufacturers direct refrigerant handling. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. Restricting refrigerant sales ensures trained professionals handle refrigerants safely, reducing venting and protecting the environment, consistent with the Clean Air Act's goals. 40 CFR .32. Other options misrepresent regulatory intent. Question 30. While servicing a small appliance, Wilson wants to verify the system's refrigerant state. Which statement best describes the relationship between refrigerant pressure and temperature during recovery? A. Pressure and temperature correlate. A low pressure ambient temperature indicates low refrigerant charge or leak. B. Pressure and temperature are independent and do not affect each other. C. High pressure that low temperature always means system overcharge. D. Refrigerant pressure is not reliable indicator of system charge during recovery. Answer. Correct answer A. Explanation. Pressure-temperature relationships are fundamental in refrigeration. Low pressure ambient temperature usually indicates low refrigerant or a leak. This guides technicians in diagnosis and recovery efforts. Options B, C, and D contradict basic thermodynamic principles. ASHRAE Refrigeration Handbook.